You've probably heard this claim many times. Glass ionomers actually remineralize dentin. It's one of those phrases that sounds amazing, maybe almost too good to be true. A filling material that doesn't just fill the hole, but it actually helps heal the tooth. That's a big deal, but does it really happen inside the tooth? Or is that just a story we've been repeating since the Fuji marketing rep started saying it? Today we're gonna find out. Does the science actually support the idea that glass ionomers can remineralize dentin long term, or are we just falling for some nice sounding chemistry? This question sits right at the intersection of biology and restorative dentistry. When you're treating a deep cavity, you're staring at that soft, leathery dentin and thinking, how much do I take out? Go too far and you risk hitting the pulp. Stop too early and you worry about leaving behind decay. That decision, how deep to go, is one of the biggest judgment calls that we make as restorative dentists. Selective caries removal has completely changed that equation. We're no longer grinding until everything feels like a rock. We're taking out the infected dentin, but we're leaving behind the affected dentin. Tissue that's partially and partly demineralized but still structurally sound. The big question is, if we seal that dentin properly, can it actually get stronger again? Can it really remineralize under the right conditions? And if so, all glass ionomers, the material, it makes that happen. So let's take a quick step back and talk about what a glass ionomer actually is. Glass ionomers are materials that harden through a simple acid-base reaction. You mix a special glass powder with a liquid acid, and it sets while releasing beneficial ions, mainly fluoride, calcium, and a few others. The key is that these ions don't just stay in the filling. They can move across the boundary between the material and the tooth, creating what's called an ion exchange zone. That movement of ions is what gives glass ionomers their bioactive reputation. In the presence of a little moisture, the ions can diffuse into the partially demineralized dentin underneath. If that dentin's collagen framework is still intact, those ions can rebuild some of the lost mineral, essentially rehardening the dentin. That's the process that we call remineralization. It doesn't happen instantly, it takes time, and it depends on keeping that environment sealed. But if the lab data holds true, it means glass ionomer restorations are doing more than just plugging a hole. They're actually helping the tooth repair itself. So what does the research say? Well, a 2023 systematic review by Galati and colleagues, it was published in the Journal of Functional Biomaterials. It looked at more than 20 studies testing how well conventional and resin-modified glass ionomers could remineralize dentin. Across the board, they found consistent increases in microhardness and in calcium and phosphate levels beneath the fillings. These are clear signs of mineral gain. Both traditional and resin-modified glass ionomers performed about the same, but when they were mixed with additives like bioactive glass or CPP ACP, the results got even better. Yes, these were lab studies, not long-term clinical trials, but the consistency was impressive. The data clearly showed that glass ionomers can promote remineralization of caries-affected dentin. Then in 2024, Kuru and coworkers, they were writing in BMC Oral Health, and they directly compared Biodentin and Fuji 9, which is a classic glass ionomer. They made standardized cavities in extracted molars, and they stored them in a simulated body fluid for 21 days. When they analyzed the dentin underneath, both materials showed significant increases in calcium and phosphate compounds compared to untreated controls. Biodentin had slightly more mineral gain, but Fuji 9 still performed very well, far better than doing nothing at all. In other words, both materials actively feed ions back into the tooth. But how do we know this isn't just happening on the surface? That's where a 2022 study by Hoshika and colleagues comes in. Using high-powered microscopy, they examined the boundary between the glass ionomer and the dentin. What they found was a true ion exchange layer. It was a narrow band where the two materials merge. On the tooth side, a new mineral-rich layer had formed. On the glass ionomer side, ions were depleted, showing that they had migrated into the tooth. That layer is what gives glass ionomers their chemical bond, and it's something composites simply don't do. Then there's the fluoride story. In 2023, Nicholson published a review showing how glass ionomers release fluoride continuously and even recharge from external sources like toothpaste or varnish. This slow, steady release doesn't directly rebuild dentin, but it creates a healthier environment for remineralization by keeping bacteria and acid in check. So think of fluoride here as the security guard that protects the conditions needed for mineral repair. Now, another recent study by Al-Wakil in 2024 compared ion-releasing restorative materials, including glass ionomers, after caries removal. And they actually found that dentin under glass ionomer restorations became significantly harder over time and contained more calcium and phosphate. In simple terms, the dentin wasn't just sealed, it was getting stronger. These results echo the older clinical work from the Journal of Dentistry, where restored teeth showed actual mineral gain under glass ionomers months after placement. And it's a pattern that we keep seeing. The chemistry just works, and the tooth benefits. Now, how does this compare with the newer bioactive materials? Calcium silicate cements like biodentin or TheraCal release more calcium initially, and they may form mineral faster in the lab, but glass ionomers have a broader set of advantages. They bond chemically to enamel and dentin, they release and recharge fluoride, and expand and contract more like a natural tooth structure. So even if calcium silicate materials edge them out for short-term mineral gain, glass ionomers deliver longer-term, more stable protection that's chemical, structural, and mechanical all at once. So what does this mean in real life, chairside? Well, if you're doing selective caries removal, stopping at firm, leathery dentin instead of removing everything, restoring with a glass ionomer is biologically the right move. The goal isn't just to cover the dentin, it's to create an ion-rich environment that allows it to heal. And here's what that looks like in practice. You excavate to firm dentin, not soft, but don't overdry. Place a conventional or resin-modified glass ionomer as your liner or base. Both work well. Make sure the restoration is well sealed, because the longer it stays isolated from bacteria, the better the chance for remineralization. And if you have access to newer versions with added bioactive ingredients, even better. Those small changes can turn what used to be a risky deep restoration into a biologically active repair process. Now, before we start celebrating, let's be honest about the limitations. Most of this evidence comes from lab studies, not long-term randomized clinical trials. That means these results come from controlled conditions, not the real-world mix of saliva, bacteria, and training forces. But the mechanism is consistent across all studies. And chemistry, it does all make sense. Every sign we have points in the same direction. When properly sealed, glass ionomers help strengthen the underlying dentin, and clinically, those restorations tend to hold up really well. Teeth stay symptom-free, and when we have to re-enter them later, the dentin is firmer and healthier. It's not direct proof, but it's about as close as we can get without drilling into live patients just to check. So what's the bottom line? Based on everything we know right now, yes, glass ionomers really do remineralize caries-infected teeth. They make it harder. They increase its mineral content. They create a chemical bond through that ion exchange layer. And resin-modified versions perform about the same as the traditional ones. And enhanced versions with bioactive additives perform even a little better. And while calcium silicate materials may win slightly in the short term, glass ionomers still stand out for their fluoride release, rechargeability, and their long-term stability. When you use a glass ionomer for a deep lesion or a sandwich restoration, you're not just filling space, you're actually setting up an environment where the tooth can actually heal. It's pretty remarkable. If I had to sum it up all in just maybe one line, it's this: a well-sealed glass ionomer restoration over caries-affected dentin doesn't just survive, it actually helps the tooth recover. That's why glass ionomers deserve a bigger role in modern restorative dentistry, especially in deep or high-risk caries. They're not perfect, they don't polish like composites, and they can wear faster, but biologically they're doing something resin simply can't. So the next time that you're staring at a deep lesion and you're just a millimeter away from the pulp, pause for a second. If you stop right there, dry gently, and seal it with a good glass ionomer, you might be giving that tooth a real chance to heal itself. And that's what great dentistry is all about: being conservative, biologically smart, and guided by science. Let's keep working together to make dentistry fun, fulfilling, and rewarding. Subscribe so you don't miss the next strategy, and I'll see you soon.